provide my view about the possible ways to implement teaching and testing procedures, primarily during the first 2 years of L2 learning, that are informed and guided by the construct of L2 interactional competence. So I really had serious doubts about whether I could do this when I received this, so I wasn't sure I could say yes. I know something about interactional competence, but do I know enough about the teaching and actually forget about testing? Do I know enough about the teaching of interactional competence systematically? Especially, do I know enough about teaching of IC during the first 2 years of L2 learning to talk about it, enough to talk about it? I didn't feel that I had enough to contribute to the topic I was invited to contribute to. But why did I say yes to this? Here's why. I'm beginning to ask what's the point of everything, the stuff I do, the research I do? Why am I doing, just because I write a paragraph on pedagogical interaction in every paper I write, does it mean that it's changing the way people are behaving? Does it mean that it's making the teacher somewhere, in some corner in the world, think twice about what he or she is doing or experimenting a different way of teaching? And does it mean that some child, some student is benefiting from that kind of experimentation? So these are kind of the questions that's going through my mind. At the same time, I also read and reread the special issue of Research on Language and Social Interaction. There's a recent issue, I read it with my doctoral seminar, on how conversation analysts have been doing intervention work. So how they have, so in that special issue, I was presented with a whole range of models of how CA findings or CA analysts have helped practitioners directly, not just like here are the implications, directly how to diagnose seizure patients better, with greater accuracy, how to improve helpline communications, how to design intervention space, how to improve aphasic conversations. So all these, so they are really showing me how they can make their work matter. And it makes me want to make my work matter. And this is a perfect, the invitation turned out to be a perfect opportunity for me to kind of think about this systematically for the very first time. So I was thinking, so we were thinking, so for interaction to happen, what does it really take, right? What is the kinds of stuff people have to do to make interaction happen? It turns out that that's exactly the object of inquiry of conversation analysis. Okay, for half a century, conversation analysis has produced a whole body of wealth of findings on interactional competence. It's the whole thing. It's the study of the methods and procedures people use to understand each other and make themselves understood. And that's the essence of interactional competence. It's the stuff that interactional competence is made of. So we went back to that. We basically put all those findings together and represent them in what we call a model of interactional practices. So here's the stuff that you have to be able to do in order to make interaction happen. First of all, in order for any interaction to happen, you have to have you have to have a turn, right? You have to know how to build a turn, a single unit one, a multi-unit one, and you have to know how to distribute that turn. So you have to know how to select somebody if you want to get somebody to talk, or self-select, or if nobody self-selects, you have to know how to continue. So you have to know how to build it and how to distribute it. That's the very basic first level. Without turn taking, there is no interaction. So for interaction, so that's the basic one. And then, of course, once you've got the turns, you know how to build it, you know how to do these things, you know how to do current select next speaker self-select. You still have to do something with it, right? With the turns in your hands, what are you going to do with it? So you have to build courses of action. And that's the part that's traditionally the most dealt with in pragmatics. So when people say, you have to know how to disagree, you have to know how to compliment, you have to know how to request, reject, including the stuff we heard from Carmen and OG yesterday about you have to demonstrate listenership, active listenership, you have to do all these things you do. The courses of action you build with turns, but sequencing practice is what you put in those turns that you get or you distribute. And of course, you have to know something about how to open and end the conversation. Otherwise, you'd be going on forever, right? So that's logically, that's another part, opening and closing. And throughout all these things, practices, you have to know how to fix stuff, okay? It's kind of the maintenance procedure. So you have to know the ways of how to kind of address problems in speaking, and hearing, and understanding. So that's the repair practices. So you have to know all these things for interaction to happen. Of course, the issue is, how do you deal with this? Is it possible? Is it possible for us to do all this with lower level learners? Can lower level learners do this complex set of things called interactional practices? Of course, then we have to say, what is a lower level learner? What makes a lower level learner lower, right? And so with some help with my colleagues in testing, so they said go to the Common European Framework, and basic user and independent user and proficient user. And basic user is A1 and A2. And so here are the descriptors of their grammar and vocabulary. So I'm going to, from this point out, structure the rest of my talk around one piece of one little brief conversation. It's a phone conversation. Donnie called Marcia because he's stuck. So he kind of is trying to get some help. And it's very brief. And I'm going to try to say a few things about this, and the rest of it is going to be around this very brief thing. One is I'm going to try to say that it's, in terms of linguistics, vocabulary and grammar, it's lower level, probably, okay? And then I'm going to say, despite the limited range of linguistic resources, it's also, it takes, for this conversation to have, it takes a full range of interactional practices, or what we call interactional competence. And I'm going to try to say that this full range is teachable to lower levels.
Hello?
Marcia.
Yeah.
Donnie.
Hi, Donnie.
Guess what?
What?
My car is stalled. And I'm up here in the Glen.
Oh.
And I don't know if this is possible, but see, I have to open up the bank at in Brentwood.
Yeah, and I know you want, and I would, but except I've got to leave in about 5 minutes.
Okay, then I gotta call somebody else right away. Okay?
Okay, Donnie.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
So if you think about the A1 descriptors, this probably fits with that, right? We can also make some very simple observations, like there's only mostly one syllable words in terms of vocabulary, hi, guess, here, no. And there's only 4 two-syllable words like hello, minute, somebody, away. And the terms are mostly composed of single TCU, single lexical, hello, phrasal, guess what, or clausal, my car is stalled. The stalled is a fancy word, so you kind of have to probably lower level, but I don't drive, so. And then the only multi-unit terms that are only possible, but blah, 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 blah. So it's I would say at the surface level, you can look at this like it doesn't take much vocabulary and grammar to make this thing happen. But of course, you can know all these things. You still may not know how to deploy these things at a particular time in a particular way to accomplish particular purposes. And that's when interactional competence, interactional practices becomes relevant, right? So you still need to, so the way I'm going to do this is to break it up into 4 sections. So go through them one by one and kind of go through what it really takes, what kinds of interactional practices and competence it takes for this to happen. And sequentially, in this very brief phone call, we start with opening, then go to a pre-announcement, and there's a section is requesting and rejecting, and then closing. So here's the opening. So one way to do this is really to look at line by line and say, what is the relevant next, right? So you hear this phone ring, what will be the relevant next? Answer it, right? But how do you answer it in English? You can probably have multiple ways to answer it. So that itself becomes a pair. So that's the very first pair. You can bring an answer. It seems really extremely, there's nothing fancy about it, but just know hello doesn't mean you know how to use hello in a particular place, not as a greeting, but as an answer in a phone. So what happens after that? You pick up the phone, you say hello. What do you do now? Hmm?
You ask a question.
You ask a question? So you ask a question? So you will say, what time is it? Maybe it's not asking a question. What is the next thing that would happen? That's the identify. That's probably really important before you're going into things, right? So there is that thing you need to do to do some identification work. So the person uses the voice sample Marcia and says, hello Marcia. So what is line 3 doing? You see? Hello is a greeting, right? Marcia also identifies Marcia. If you just say hello, you're just greeting. You don't know who Marsha is. So it's doing two different things here. Hello, Marsha. So what would line 3 make in CH or make conditionally relevant? It means what would be appropriate response to line 3? Oh, you can say, yeah, I'm Marsha, right? What else can you say?
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi. When you say, oh, hi, it's very tricky. You're saying, I know who you are, but you can pretend, right? You can do, I don't really, but if I say, oh, hi, it's like, I kind of know who you are. So you get a little bit of greeting here, and you get an identification. What this is making relevant is, of course, is that you can identify the person back, right? The nice way to do this will be, hi, Donnie. That would be the smoothest way this conversation can happen. So that would be the relevant. Notice that it doesn't happen immediately. This will be another pair, right? Greeting. There are two things here, identification, recognition. The reason why it didn't happen immediately is because Marsha in line 4 did not say, hi Donnie. She said, yeah. Yeah says, I am Marsha. I don't quite know who you are, which makes relevant for Donnie to say next, it's Donnie. And then it happens that way. So we know, in terms of overall structuring practice, in opening, there's this basic level of business you have to be taken care of. Summon and answer, you have to answer the phone, you have to do some kind of identification recognition, and you have to do greetings. And then we also know something about sequencing, okay? Some kinds of, what are the pairs do we have? We have summon and answer, we have greeting and greeting. What kind of courses action would you be building into it? And we know something about turn taking. What do we know about turn taking? What can we say? What can we tell the lower level learner about turn taking in this one? That, can you breathe? You don't have to go on and on, have to give a big essay about what you're doing. And minimal gasp or no gasp. So something that's very noticeable, for example, there's no silence or anything, and even in line 5 you have a Donnie started even a little before Marsha ends. So that's a really important kind of a turn-taking thing. So how do we teach this, right? So one way to say, I'm going to say, let's teach them how to answer the phone. So here's let's focus on Marsha. Listen, there. All right, let's take it off. So I'm going to play this again. You're going to be Marsha, okay? Ready? All right, you're a little late. So when we put all this together, we'll take this away. You want to do it? Ready? No, I'm going to do ring first, all right? Okay, you have to fit it in sequentially. Good, perfect timing. 3 steps. Of course, you can make them do Donnie. The next bit is pre-announcement, sequencing things. You have a pre-announcement. Try, see if you have the interactional competence to respond to guess what. Ready? Now this one is going to be, you're going to hear a beep, and then you go, guess what? Okay? Little late, totally. Anything about this whole phone call is about Donnie needing help, requesting and rejecting. In line 9, Donnie says, my car is stalled. So he's presenting a problem, reporting a problem. And so what does presenting a problem make conditionally relevant? What does it call for, right? In a conversation, somebody presents a problem. You can do a whole bunch of things, right? You can say, oh, that's too bad. I'm so sorry for you. You can say, you can express sympathy. What else can you do? You can offer help. Is there anything else you can do? Yeah. Please help. Or you can say, how loud is it? Okay, you can ask for more specific. You can do a whole bunch of things. Let's see what Marsha does. So Marsha didn't do anything, right? So that's a noticeable thing. Marsha didn't offer any, whatever is relevant. There's a whole bunch of things relevant, but she didn't do anything. And then did Donnie go ahead and say, please help? No. He says, I'm up here in the Glen. He goes on and kind of provide more detail where he is. And that might be a reason to say, I'm near you, so it's easier for you to. So it might be a way of saying help, but. Okay, so at this time, if you were Marsha, what would you do? What's the next thing that's relevant here? I'll be there right away, or sorry, I can't help. And then things. Marsha says, oh. Marsha says, this is new information to me. Interesting. All right. So what would Donnie do at this point? If you're Donnie, ask for help? Please. Donnie did nothing. And then Donnie had an out-breath. Nothing. And Donnie says, and. Donnie is creating all these additional opportunities for Marsha to come in and offer help. It's not moving. Nothing's happening. Nothing. And then Donnie says, I don't know if it's possible. Well, we don't know what's possible. But another out-breath and pause. See, I have to open up the bank. He didn't say, come help me. He says, there's a reason why I need help. But he didn't say it. It goes on. Marsha says, nothing. This is the most painful thing. And Donnie adds more information, creates another possible completion point for Marsha to say something. Nothing. But Donnie's not saying anything either. We can learn a lot about the fancy word you can see everybody knows is dispreferred, but in terms of sequencing, we can learn that silence is trouble. So in the first opening thing, we learn that silence needs to be minimized, and this really shows that if there is silence, it's read as trouble of some sort. And we can also learn pragmatically in terms of sequencing. Instead of asking for help directly, you can describe the trouble, you can give reason for needing the help, or simply wait for an offer. Do things like, and silence, all kinds of things. And then instead of saying no, what can be read as a no is things like, you just keep silent. You say things like, oh, say I'm listening, but without providing what's the call for next bit. So we can learn a lot about sequencing just from this. And if you look at how Marsha responds, rejection can be done indirectly, right? Through silence, delay, stuttering, stating a reason. So we have Marsha's yeah, and I know you want, she abandons it. Basically, I know you want help, and I would give you help, but except that I can't. Okay, so this is how it will come out if everything is complete TCUs. So we can also learn something about repair in the sense for a lower level learner that interaction is not made up of complete sentences, perfect things. You don't just speak like you're giving a lecture. People do all these they start and stop all the time. Stuttering or disfluency is normal. It's part of interaction. Or disfluency can be a way of indicating difficulty. You're doing something with it. So this is the repair bit we can learn about this. So when it becomes fairly clear that Marsha is not going to give anything, in line 26, Donnie, you hear the speed up. Okay, now I'm going to call somebody else right away. So that's really a starting of the pre-closing, right? He didn't just hang up the phone. That will be the most efficient way. But he said, I got to call somebody right away in a very quick way. And in line 28, you don't get Marsha coming up and says, okay. So there's that micro pause there, and Donnie has to do it himself, do a pre-closing, okay, and then Marsha goes, okay. And then you have the Donnie's thanks a lot is also part of the closing. Then you get the by and by. So closing is a whole package, and it's something it could be taught as well. So I'm going to have you do Donnie now, I think. This is going to be hard. 5 minutes. Okay, I got to go call somebody right away. And line 28, Marsha did nothing. Donnie initiates, okay? Then you get okay, and Donnie says bye. Thanks a lot, bye. Okay, ready?
Yeah, and I know you want, and I would, but except I've got to leave in about 5 minutes. Okay, John. Fine.
Nice. Okay. I wanted to see it actually plays out, how it actually plays out in the classroom. At the end, I asked them to fill out a survey. We asked them the survey responses. I do. So most of them did yes throughout, and then there's a couple of no responses. I understand I should not wait for silence. One person says no, and there's 2 no that I can make a request without asking, and I understand I can say no without requesting. So of course there's something iffy about this. And afterwards I said, well, we didn't really give them the survey before. Maybe they know all this beforehand too. So who knows if it's the class. So the open-ended questions gave us a little bit more. So we asked, was this lesson useful to you? So 5 would be really useful, 1 would be useless, right? So 3 would be in the middle. And about 8 of them, basic says it's very useful or close to very useful. And 2, nobody says useless. They're probably being polite, but who knows? And what did you learn from the lesson? This is the stuff they talk about repeatedly. They learn this, guess what? This is the what. This is how you do preannounce. And they said, if I have to say no, I can say I would, but. So these are the things. I learned quick responses, how to speak more quickly. Of course, that's not the point. It's not about speaking quickly, but that's what they got out of it. It's about the timing and everything. And we asked, how can we make this lesson better for you? They repeatedly said, need more practice individually, not just in a group. It's small groups. We only had, because it's a packed, we can't have a 3-hour class, of course. It's just a very short thing. Let students be both Donnie and Marcia, so let them do them yourselves, not without the screen. They need to learn about other situations in conversation. I think what this all says is they need it. And there is this sense that this is the kind of stuff they want to do. And after class, they also told the instructor, they said, is this going to become a regular class? So there is this sense, so that's an encouraging aspect of it. Of course, one person says, I didn't hear the conversation well at all. It's just completely over my head. This returns to my initial question about if you have limited linguistic resources, right? Limited vocabulary, how interactionally can I be with this limited resource? So in terms of turn taking, I said I can't understand the conversation turns can be. So these are the possibilities. It's not out of reach. Can be simple and short. I can listen for and build turns with single words, phrases, and clauses. I don't have to have this fancy long thing. I understand I should not wait for silence to start talking. I understand that, doesn't mean I can do that, right? I can time my talking simple exchanges to minimize silence. That's something that probably could be trained. In terms of sequencing, what can you learn from it? I can answer the phone. I can identify myself with this is X, not I am X, right? So simple things like that. I can initiate and return greetings. Hello, Donnie. Hi, Marcia. I can do announcement with pre-announcement. Guess what? I understand that silence means trouble. I can make requests without actually asking through troubles telling. I can reject a request without saying no by remaining silent, simply doing listening, or giving a reason. In terms of overall structuring, I can open and close the conversation. In terms of repair, I can and feel free to start, stop, retract, correct, and leave a sentence incomplete as I talk. So all this brings me back to the rubric on basic users. So I went back to look at the rubric and look at the descriptors of that. It does make me think that perhaps at the basic level, it could do a little bit more than exchanging information and describing things. So it's not, this strikes me as a very transactional descriptor of what learners can do at that level. So as kind of an open-ended query question for me, for everybody is there room in a rubric like this to build in more specific descriptors of what a lower level learner can accomplish, can do with the limited linguistic resources?